let's talk about wrist training. Now, many arm wrestlers, myself included, believe that the ability to curl your wrist in like this
Look at that. He's baiting the hand and wrist.
is the most important strength in arm wrestling. Some of us refer to it as cupping, but before moving forward, let's talk about what cupping exactly is. So, there's the wrist flexion component of cupping, but of course, there's also a decent amount of finger flexion involved, especially out of the straps. Within strap arm wrestling, the role of the fingers is much less important because now you don't have to necessarily hold on to your opponent as the strap is doing most of the work for you. But whatever the case may be, finger flexion is still important because finger flexion strength and wrist flexion strength have this weird sort of relationship with each other. In our body, we have what is known as antagonist muscles, which are muscles that work against each other. So a simple example would be how the biceps flex our arm and the triceps extend it. We also have agonist muscles, which are muscles which work together with each other to produce a movement. So going back to elbow flexion, the biceps work in tandem with the brachialis and brachioradialis muscles to flex our elbow. And depending on the position and orientation of your arm, the percentage of force that's applied by each muscle group will be a little bit different. Now that we understand what agonist and antagonist muscles are, going back to wrist and finger flexion, it's not exactly a clear relationship between the two. This 2008 study using grip strength as a proxy for finger flexion strength found that wrist flexion is positively correlated with simultaneous grip exertion. That is to say, the harder someone grips, the greater their wrist flexion strength is. But that doesn't really work the other way around, as the same study found that the highest grip force observed during maximum wrist flexion was on average 85% of the subject's grip strength. So finger flexion helps with wrist flexion, but wrist flexion reduces finger flexion strength. All that being said, from an arm wrestling technical standpoint, the more important movement is still the wrist flexion component. So training finger flexion is still very important as well, since it helps in wrist flexion too. With all that in mind, how should you go about training your cupping? Now, this is going to be a general guideline to follow, but of course, you should tweak your arm wrestling training program or get your coach to guide you for whatever works best for you. If you guys are interested, I do online coaching and consultations where I have helped dozens of arm wrestlers optimize their arm wrestling training. Link is in the description below if you're interested. But to start off, here's what a general cupping day might look like. I'd start with a more pure wrist flexion movement first, because as we discussed before, wrist flexion is the more important movement. So something like a strap-supported wrist wrench, a barbell wrist curl, or cone handle would be perfect. Then I'd go with a movement that involves more finger flexion strength. So something like a strapless wrist wrench, a thick rolling handle, a flat handle, all of those work great. Then to finish off the workout, I always have some sort of wrist extension movement, and this doesn't really contribute to cupping strength per se, but it does help to prevent muscle imbalances, and in the long term, it indirectly helps to reduce the chances of injury. So something like a reverse dumbbell or barbell wrist curl works great. Or a personal favorite of mine is just to prop my arm against the table and do reverse wrist curls against the table using a cable machine. So an example of what the workout might look something like this. The first exercise, I usually like to go relatively heavier since I'm fresh. So I would do something like strap wrist wrench curls, 3 sets, 10 to 12 reps. Even though I said relatively heavier, because of the very short range of motion of most of these movements, I like to keep my rep range at least 10 plus reps if I'm not specifically training for strength or trying to peak for anything. The second exercise would be flat finger curls, 3 sets, 15 to 20 reps. Relatively lighter weight on this since your cupping would already be pretty fatigued from the first exercise. And then lastly, maybe reverse barbell wrist curls, 3 sets, 12 to 15 reps. You can go for higher reps like 20 or 30, but from what I found, the last few reps really hurt like hell. and I don't want to stop the set too early because of the lactic acid pain rather than the muscle being tired. And all of these exercises are done at an intensity of maybe 2 to 3 reps away from failure. As for the frequency, I found that 3 to 4 times a week is great for most people. These exercises don't produce a lot of systemic fatigue, which means that your body's not really going to be tired after doing these exercises. So most of the time with 1 day of rest, you're usually good to go the very next day. So I hope that this video has been helpful for you. The main reason I made this video was because a lot of you have been reaching out to me after I talked about starting my wrist training journey recently. So I just wanted to share my general training approach towards this topic. And of course, if you have your own experiences and opinions about wrist training, please feel free to share them in the comments below. I'd love to hear about them. I'm Greg, and catch you beasts in the next video.